Well, hi, everybody. Welcome into another week of UnAnchored Boston with Bob Lobel. I'm Mike Lynch, and our special guest today is none other than the great Tony Massarotti, the pride of Waltham High, Tufts University, 98.5, and a former intern at Channel 5. And we should tell you that the show is brought to you by Cold Springs RV, your destination for all things camping. And where? We're in New Hampshire, of course. And the great George Gray at the great George Gray's, Lexington, Toyota. All right, Bob Lobel, take it away. And let's get Tony indoctrinated into this hour of madness that we have every week.
What did you ever learn as an intern at Channel 5?
Not much, Bob.
And my questioning is over.
Yeah. What's that old thing? Some people teach you what to do. Some people teach you what not to do.
Oh, yeah.
So, no, in all seriousness, we had a good group of people there for a long time. And I mean, Mike, I'm sure you remember more of the names than I do. It's between, I was there at the same time as Carl Ravitch, who's now at ESPN, obviously, Paul Lucy, who's producing Celtics games, Matt Smith, who's the director of production, really, for all video production at Kraft Sports Group, the Patriots. And I'm sure I'm leaving people out. Like Michelle Bonner, who worked at ESPN, was there around the same time. It was it was like, we used to joke, it's like the the quarterback draft in the early 80s where all those guys came out at once. So it was a lot of fun, a lot of good people.
How did you ever get any work done? That's what I want to know. Well, the point is you didn't. That was the most important point.
You know, the crazy thing was, Bob, I'm sitting in the sports office one day, and Mary Richardson, she was still in news at the time. She hadn't gone to Chronicles. She came upstairs and she said, "Would you do me a favor?" And I said, "Sure. What do you want, Mary?" She says, "I've got this kid at Waverly Oaks Hardware Store. And every time I go in there, he's talking sports, you know, do you know Mike Lynch, blah, 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 blah. Would you mind talking to him?" So I said, "Sure, bring him in." Now, Tony is a sophomore in high school. And to be a legal intern, you have to be a sophomore in college. So Tony comes in, and I said, "All right, look, I'm going to have you come in Saturday and Sunday. There's no one here. You're going to come in the back door. You're going to watch the Patriots game. You're going to write down every play." So I figured, you know, it'd be scribbled on a piece of paper like this when I came in, you know, at halftime or whatever. But I come in, and there's like 8 pages that are like first and 10. Steve Grogan handoff to Moshi Tutupu plus 7 yards. You know, 2nd and 3 at the 37-yard line. Grogan swing pass to Horace Ivory, and then he put a cover page on it and stapled it all together. We've never seen anything like it. So, you know, now, you know, the NFL, you know, if you go up there, they do what Tony did as an intern back in 1980 something. So we used to call. So Tony stayed his sophomore, junior, and senior years in high school, and then his freshman and at least sophomore year in college, right, Tony?
Oh, yeah.
At least 5 years, right?
Oh, definitely. I think it even went longer than that. I think I was still helping you guys out after college.
That's a violation right there. That's a big violation.
Did you learn?
I banked a lot of money during those years, Bob. No, look, it was, you know, what can I tell you? I should have been a court stenographer is what I should have been. It might have been a better path for me. I was a good note taker.
Whatever money you didn't bank then, you're banking now. That's a good thing.
You know, I was one of those kids who in college, I didn't do the reading. I took notes in class, you know, so I was a good note taker. So I guess it was a good skill to have, but it's true. You know, they used to sneak me in the door on Sundays in the loading dock. That's how I used to walk into the building. And you know, Mary, I kept in touch with, you know, up until we lost her. I guess it was a few years ago now. And I ran into her, her and her husband, Stan Levin, who he was a producer, Mike, wasn't he?
Chronicle, yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, Mary was just a really wonderful person. And I was able to sort of keep in touch with her all those years, like, and she always remembered it. It was, you know, for someone that really, after she introduced me to Mike, I didn't have a whole heck of a lot to really connect with Mary about, but we always kept in touch a little bit. She was really a great person. But, you know, I'm not telling you guys anything you don't know. You try to pay the stuff back as you go. And now there are always people who reach out or looking to try to get in the business. We all know how good a business it is. It's you get to work in what your passion is. You never feels like you're going to work any day. So, but again, I was lucky to be around a lot of people to learn from, both at, Channel 5, the Herald. It was, look, at a place like Boston, Bob, I'm not telling you again anything you don't know, but highly competitive sports media market. And you learn from the best when you grow up here just by reading and watching.
Yeah, it's kind of dog eat dog. It was even more dog eat dog a few years back when it was newspaper versus electronic. But then we started paying the newspaper people, so they came over to our side. But the reality, Tony, now that we've got you here, and you're really a very outspoken co-host on the Sports Hub. It's been a very successful show, as I'm sure you well know, far beyond, I'm sure, your wildest imagination. I can only imagine. I think I talked to you before you went into that endeavor, just before it, and you had no idea what you were getting into, and all of a sudden, the thing explodes into something really big, and that's great for you, and great for the other people involved in the program. But that brings us to the total scene of Boston sports, which you still have to cover.
Yes.
Right now, I guess the operative word would be it sucks.
Yeah. Well, that's one that I use a lot. That's for sure.
No, that's why I thought you'd be more comfortable hearing that.
Yeah. It's to me, depending on the team, like it takes you back to a different time, because let's face it, what we had over the first 20 years of this century or millennium was unlike anything that I think has ever existed anywhere. I don't know that there's ever been a city to win as much as Boston won in all the sports that we won in. I think it was 18, 19 trips to the finals, 12 championships. There was a trip to the finals every year, and it felt like there was a parade every year. And again, I don't need to tell you guys, it's not normal. And so I think we've kind of gone back to, I don't want to say the early 90s, because I think that was worse, where, the teams like the Celtics now are championship caliber, and the Bruins just had the best record in the league. Now, the postseasons were disappointing, but the only team that I would say is really kind of bottomed out is the Red Sox. I think that they're sort of a disaster and a mess in a lot of different ways. But, relative to what we're used to, it's been a little negative, which maybe is right up our alley. But I just think that some of the losses too, it's the heartbreaking nature of them or the disappointing nature of them that's made them less palatable than maybe they might have been at another time. The Celtics to me have the best team in the league, and having just watched the Denver-Miami series, I think we saw that Miami wasn't as good as they looked against the Celtics. And, Denver really exposed the flaws in Miami. The Celtics weren't able to do it. And I think it was largely because of effort and coaching. And those are hard things to stomach when you lose, that it's really about smarts and effort and mental toughness and all that sort of stuff. It's not about talent and ability. And I don't think it was with the Bruins either.
So I sit around and watch those finals at Denver and Miami, and I say, how does Jokic fall to the second round, 14th pick or 41st pick? Whatever. How is that possible in this day and age?
Well, really, it's amazing. I mean, I think people just looked at him and said, this guy isn't the most athletic guy in the world, so he's going to have trouble keeping up with the athletes. And there's some truth to that, but mentally, he's just so far ahead of everybody on the floor. It's unbelievable. I think the guy's a throwback. I love watching him.
Well, yeah,
I think, yeah, he's rapidly becoming my favorite player in the league because of just the way he plays. He sees everything before it happens. Again, in a throwback kind of way. He's, sees the game like a Bird or a Magic or one of those guys, or even a Jordan. He's just not as athletically gifted as some of those other guys, but that doesn't mean he can't play the game. I love him. And it's nice to see a guy like that rewarded. They've built a good team there in Denver, and with good drafting and good decision-making. And I think Jokic, he could win a couple of them here. I mean, they're going to be guys that want to play with him.
How did Joel Embiid win the MVP award? Watching, we never watched Denver. I mean, if you're a real junkie, you probably catch him a half dozen times. So the regular casual sports fan doesn't see Denver that much.
Right.
And I watched this guy, and I said, "Oh my goodness, he's unstoppable. He is unstoppable. He has left hand, he has a right hand, he can pass. I mean, he's triple doubles are nothing to him. He blinks and he has a triple double."
Yeah, I mean, this the NBA phrase, right? But he impacts. It's now a sports phrase now, but he impacts the game in every way imaginable. And he's not a great defensive player in the athletic sense, but he protects the rim. He's in the right spot. You can dribble by him. I mean, he's not perfect, but it's, what you're going to get on every night. If you only get 17 points, you're probably going to get 16 rebounds and 12 assists.
Yeah,
and if he gets, he's really strong, Bob. Really, really strong guy. And look, the MVP is a regular season award, right? Embiid had a great year, and he really carried Philly, which I guess when you think about it is what the MVP is. But Jokic is, one of the 5 best players in the league, if not the best. And I think, again, mentally, I think the way he thinks the game is some of the passes he makes, and his height's a factor too, but there are lanes there to pass the ball that other guys don't see or don't have, and he knows they're there and he can get the ball there. So I think he might be the best passer in the league, period, independent of position and everything else. He's just off the charts and makes the game so easy for the guys that play with him.
So it's tonight the night the other shoe drops when Cassidy wins the Stanley Cup?
I'll tell you, I'm rooting for him. I don't know if you guys feel the same way.
How can you not root for him?
Yeah, look, he's again, old school kind of in your face coach. The players tuned him out. And I think really the more you look at the Bruins, the more you start to wonder whether the players were really the primary problem this past year, because Sweeney went out and got them everything they needed to win. They had veteran guys. They had some young guys. They made deadline acquisitions, like all of that. So, and meanwhile, the coach that they didn't want to play for went to another market and won. I think it's more and more an indictment on the Bruins roster and how they just didn't want to fight for it or weren't ready to fight for it. And maybe on some level, it's an indictment on Montgomery too, who's only been here a year. And I mean that from the stylistically, it felt like the Bruins were just too soft. So, Cassidy ended up in another place, and, now he's 1 win from it. Hopefully it doesn't turn the other way on him. In that sport, you never know.
No, it don't. So,
but what a story. Guy gets fired here, goes out there.
I agree. I just don't think enough's been paid to that story. It's just kind of floating out there, and you say, oh my God, the guy's going to win a Stanley Cup. But a lot of people don't even know who's in the finals.
I know it. Yeah, and it's unfortunate too, because they're both teams are good stories and they play hard. Like the hockey itself is pretty good. Hockey not pretty good. The quality of the games, with the exception of the blowout win by Vegas, the quality of the games has been good, and as is always the case in the NHL playoffs. But they're not big markets, so I'm sure I haven't looked at the numbers, but I'm sure they're low relative to what they could be.
We have the President's Trophy though. We don't have the cup, but we do have the President's Trophy. If I had a nickel for every time the Bruins would hang an Adams Division banner from the Garden, or we have the President's Trophy, I would throw it. It's the only. I mean, can you remember where anybody finished in the NFL last year?
No.
Who finished first? I mean, probably was the Eagles, but I'm not 100% sure. But we know who won the President's Trophy. What a worthless trophy! What a worthless award!
Yeah, we've turned into a regular season market, Mike. Right? Like really. You go right across the board. It's like the Bruins set a record. Celtics had the second best record in the league. Then they get into the playoffs and they lose. Yeah, I mean,
and the Red Sox lead the league in errors.
Yeah. How about that performance last night? That was something, wasn't it?
Unbelievable.
Again, they give up 4 runs and lose 4-3. One of them is on a walk with the bases loaded and extra innings after they walked the bases loaded, by the way. Right? So 3 straight walks. You add the ghost runner, that's 4. They forced a run home. And 2 of the other 3 came on errors. So they gave away 3 runs in the game and they lose 4-3. And, I do like, though, just to the regular season thing, I do like the fact that the NBA has become more of a crapshoot in the playoffs, it feels like the last couple of years than it had been in the past. So you don't have the super teams anymore. And I know everybody liked to watch the finals with the super teams, but I think the playoffs overall have become a better product.
Yeah.
And so, anybody can beat anybody, really. The Atlanta Hawks gave the Celtics a hard time in the first round. And so I think that's good for the league. I think that's good for the NBA, but it may make winning championships here a little harder now.
Yeah. Milwaukee Bucks, gone, first round.
Right. And that never used to happen in basketball. Never,
Right.
never. The first round was almost always an automatic sweep. And now it feels like there were more fights there. And what was it? Was it Phoenix and the Clippers who had to play one another in the first round this year?
Yeah.
And then the Lakers in the second round with Phoenix? Like these were, those were good matchups.
Yeah.
Usually the early rounds of the NBA playoffs are throwaways.
Tony, what would you I hate to get back to the Red Sox, but they are the festering wound in the city right now. How do you even think about fixing it? I guess you got to want to fix it first, but then how do you think about fixing it? I mean, really, is Cora in danger? I mean, he hasn't exactly glorified himself this season either. The pitching coach, we'll go right down the line. Obviously, Bloom. Where, when, who do you start here? Where do you start turning things around if you in fact want to?
From the top down, Bob. I mean, I everything you just said there, any and all of the above. I think you really look at it, and I can't remember a time in the last, let's call it 30 years, where I have been less optimistic about where the Red Sox are going. And that's saying something, right? Like, I could be on the pessimistic or cynical side as much as anybody, but like, really, I got to go back to the early 90s where I remember a time where I looked at them and said, where's this going? When are they going to be good? And even then, they had Mo Vaughn, and you sort of thought there were a couple of cornerstone pieces. And Clemens was here in the early 90s still. So but I look at them now and I say, when are they going to be good again? I don't have any idea. And I think the biggest problem is the scariest one, which is talent. I just don't know how much talent they really have. And right. I don't know how much they have in the minor leagues.
They don't have a shortstop. They got one of the right fielder gets benched for loafing. I mean, what's to me this is unconscionable.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I was looking this up this morning because with them blowing the game that last night the way they did, I went through and looked at where they ranked defensively at every position. There is one spot on the diamond where they are above average. There's another where they might be average, and the rest are below average. So, and by a lot. They have the worst middle of the diamond in the game, I think. And I didn't compare it to other teams, but they rank in the mid to low 20s in basically defense at center field, shortstop, second base, and catcher is below average as well. So you have that kind of
like Vasquez, we'd be all right.
Yeah, well, right, exactly. They'd be better than what they have. So I just, and second base is getting overlooked because of shortstop. Second base is a train wreck. They have the worst second base defense in baseball, according to some of the numbers. And let's not forget, all this happened in a year where they changed the rules. So you knew you weren't going to play the shift. You couldn't play the shift. You knew there were going to be more balls in play. The game was going to be at a faster pace. So you had to have an athletic second baseman, athletic shortstop. And they don't really have either one. And if anyone wants to look at injuries and say, well, Trevor Story's hurt, the kid they picked up from Kansas City at Alberto Mondesi, good defensive player at shortstop, he's hurt. I would tell you, well, they knew these guys were hurt when they brought them in. So it's one of those things where you kind of get what you pay for. The thing that worries me the most is they can't evaluate talent. They don't have enough talent in the organization. And everybody talks about the kid coming up in Double-A, Marcelo Meyer, who they got with the number 4 pick. He's at least a year plus away. I mean, we might see him at the end of 2024. But then when he gets here, how long is it going to take him to play at a good level? So Tony, I don't know. I'm worried. I don't know where that one's going. They're spending less money, so they don't want to pay for the talent. They're not bringing in the talent through evaluation. I don't know how that one gets fixed unless you turn it over to new people.
Let me ask you this: your sons were younger. Let's say they were like 7 and 9 years old. You took them to a Red Sox game, and they wanted to get a Red Sox jersey, a Twin souvenirs across the street. You used to walk in there, and it used to be who do I pick? There's 10 guys who my kids gotta love. Who would they pick now? Is there anybody's jersey that they would want to wear?
Mike, the only guy you would say is probably Devers. That's it. You know, a Devers, and he's not having a great year either. His defense has slipped. He's chasing bad pitches, or at least was until relatively recently. I think some of that is a product of the lineup around him. You know, a guy like Devers to me, and look, he can hit. We all know he can hit. But he feels to me like the kind of guy who's still more of a follower. And, you know, when you have a team like this, you need a guy at the center of your roster who's going to hit 310 even when the team's bad. I think he's being affected by the environment. I mean, that's what it feels like to me. He loses interest. The team's not competitive. He's not staying focused, making errors in the field and having bad at bats. That's a mental thing, I think. So, but yeah, to answer your question, after him.
Yeah, that's what is your other? No, one
The
son.
next one, Mike, would be Duran, because then they think you're in a rock band.
Yeah, but that's what it's come to, right? It's like, so I would say, you know, like if you're asking me, I would tell my kids, well, Bayo might be something. He's got ability. You know, I like Whitlock. His last game was good, but as a starter, he's been pretty ordinary. But that's it.
You better grab a Chris Sale one, because you're not going to be around much longer.
Yeah, and you may never see him pitch again, Bob.
Hey, you know what? If you're thinking about a new vehicle, go where Lobel and I go, and we don't go anyplace else. We go see our good friend George Gray at George Gray's Lexington Toyota, 409 Mass Ave at Lexington. We've been customers for years because we know George Gray will treat you right. They're family-owned, family-owned and family-operated dealership that we trust, and you can trust as well. Go see the great George Gray at Lexington Toyota. You will not be disappointed after you buy the car, and you'll have a friend for life, and anything you need in terms of service and anything else. They're great people. So I'm going to ask you this, Tony. Sometimes we do this with other sponsor, but George Gray is going to build a Lobel Cruiser. Remember the Madden Cruiser?
Oh, sure.
Build a Lobel Cruiser, and you're going to get to ride in the Lobel Cruiser yourself, driving it, and you have to drive cross country, and you can have anybody you want riding shotgun, professional athlete or coach, past or present, to accompany you cross country. Now, we've had some good ones in the last couple of weeks. We had Buckley last week. He picked Babe Ruth and somebody else. We've had Belichick, Parcells, DiMaggio. Who would you want to ride cross country with in one of George Gray's vehicles?
Don't pick Felder.
Yeah, no, we see enough of each other, believe me. The two of us. And he wouldn't pick me either. I'm sure of it. So, look, I would say, boy, that's a great question. I would say I would lean, given the time I spent in baseball, I'd have a hard time passing up Pedro. He just was. People ask me all the time who was the best guy to cover, and I think it was him. And not, you know, as dynamic as he was on the field, and that was part of it. He was. I always thought as dynamic off the field. I mean, he was an electric personality. He could be temperamental. He's really smart. And I say the temperamental part of it as he's human. So Pedro would tell you what he felt. Sometimes it was going to be something you didn't like, but it wasn't ever really boring. I think he had a good value system, you know, and again, not that I lived with him or anything, but, you know, he's a good-hearted guy. Doesn't mean he was perfect, but I just found the time around him to be riveting. I thought it was just absolutely great. And there were times where, you know, he would get agitated with us, or me specifically or personally, and say, you know, that was a stupid question. I don't like that. Don't get on that road. And he'd say this in a group, you know, he didn't care. And half the time you just laugh it off, but he was highly competitive, sometimes controversially so, you know, throw at guys, like he'd do all kinds of stuff. But, you know, I cherish the time covering those years. It was a great team to be around. And he was just, To me, he was top shelf every way. Really human, really honest, very good-hearted. And again, just a real person who was totally comfortable in his own skin.
Was he done when Grady left him in the game, Yankee Stadium? Was he done?
I think he thought he was coming out of the game. I think he thought, okay, it's a bullpen's game. And then Grady went to him. He wasn't about to say no because he wasn't like that. If the manager asked me, I'll keep going. But I think he walked off the mound that night thinking he was done. And it was probably surprised when, I never had that conversation specifically with him, Mike, because he was, he pitched the next year and he was gone. And in 2004, he wasn't great. He was really, I remember somebody in the organization and me saying that year, this whole thing has been about his contract. He just wants to stay healthy and get through it and hit the market. And until they got to the postseason, I think that was largely true. And if you remember, Curt Schilling started game one of the playoffs that year. Schilling had a better year than Pedro did.
Yeah.
And Pedro, in fact, I want to say that Pedro pitched, I think they started in Anaheim that year. I think the Angels had a better record than they did, or because they were the division winner. Pedro pitched game two, Schilling pitched game one, and Pedro's pissed. He was mad at that. And he ended up pitching a good game. And if you remember, he stood there afterward and said, I don't care what anybody says, I'm an ace. I know I'm an ace. Then he pitched well against the Cardinals in the World Series. He was good against the Yankees. But he was, he was just the only other guy I think I would put in that class, and I overlapped with him at the end. He was more during, I think your prime years was Bird. I think Bird would have been great to travel with because I think he's another one that was, for as much as being the hick from French Lick and all that, he was really smart, opinionated, and a really interesting guy with an interesting story.
Let's not bring up Pedro. I'm reminded of who brought him here, along with Manny Ramirez, and Dan Duquette was probably the most well, I don't know. I'd have to go back and remember, but I think he did a whole lot more for this franchise than a lot of people give him credit for.
I agree, Bobby. Underappreciated is probably, and it's because he wasn't media friendly, really awkward socially. And at the beginning, let's face it, came in after Lou Gorman, right? There were some analytics in Duquette's thinking too,
right? Which,
if you remember, Mike Gimbel, the stat man, with the pet alligator and the whole 9 yards, it caused this amazing stink at the time. Huh. But if you look at the talent that came into the organization in those years, yeah, he did a pretty good job. That 2004 team was a lot of those. Yeah, it was a lot of guys brought in by him, Mike.
So I got in the World Series ring.
Yeah, and I think they inducted him into the Hall of Fame last year, right?
Yeah.
So he deserves it. I mean, he had a big part in that. But most people remember those years as being horrible, and the media couldn't stand him. He was a horrible interview. Didn't want to tell anybody anything. And that was the start, if you remember, of that whole thing with you couldn't. You used to be able to call the GM up directly.
Yeah.
And just, he'd pick up the phone, or he'd have an assistant, and then he'd call you back and you'd have a conversation. And then over the years, it became, you had to go through media relations, and he was one of the first guys to do that, and it pissed people off to no end.
Yeah. I remember that with Lou, that you talk about the availability of Lou Gorman. And we all have these stories. Lou, I wanted to do an interview with him. He said, sure. So, says, just come with me down the locker room. I gotta pass out the paychecks. And Lou Gorman was putting the paychecks in everybody's locker. And he just opened up here, Jack Clock, look at this. $66,000 a week. Can you believe that? Can you believe that? Look at this. Clemens, like $123,000. Look at this. And he'd open half of them and show them to me. Then he'd put them in the lockers. Then we'd sit down on the stool and do the interview. And that would never happen. Never, ever, ever, ever happen.
Not in a million years.
But we went from that open book to Duquette, who I know we all like very much personally. I think he's often misunderstood because he is, I think, socially challenged a little bit. Don't you?
Yes. Yeah, totally. It's just not his thing. Look, we know more about people now than we knew then too, and people in general. I think we've all come to understand that just because people are different doesn't mean that they're a-holes, And so, Lou was really social. He would, call, he was easy to talk to, easy to be around, very warm, engaging guy. Duquette was awkward, and which I think he'd be the first to admit.
Yeah.
But he wasn't a bad guy.
He's kind of a funny guy. He's got a pretty good sense of humor.
He does. He has a really good sense of humor. And, I remember when they signed Johnny Damon, it was right around the time the team had been put up for sale, and maybe they had just announced that the Henry Group was going to take over. And so the Herald asked me to go over to the press conference and said, look, the story really is like, we knew the Damon thing was coming. This is just the press conference. But now that we know the team's going to be sold, what does this mean for Duquette? So I started asking Duquette about, the prospect of new owners, and was he worried about losing his job? And he lost his marbles. He was walking out of the interview room and started swearing at me and said, we just signed these players to improve this team. We got a good team, and you're asking me about this. And he was all ticked off. I think I saw him the next day or 2 days later at the ballpark. And, he saw me and started laughing. He said, sorry about that the other day, and I said, no problem. Don't worry about it. It happens.
You know what?
But he was like that. He was a good guy.
He was like the last guy in that spring training to know that he was going to be fired.
Yeah.
Right.
Remember that?
Yeah. Yeah. It was amazing. Right. And in that way, he was sort of had his head in the sand, was totally out of touch about it, because it was pretty clear they were going to move on. And I think at that point, if I remember this right, I think he might have even thought he was going to get a promotion to club president. Like, I think he thought, so he, not only was he sort of unaware of the whole firing aspect of it, but I think he thought, oh, I might be able to be team president under these guys.
Yeah.
And it was, in all honesty, I still talk to him from time to time. He's always been good about responding when I reached out, and he's reached out to me on a handful of occasions over the years. He's a good guy, he's a decent guy, but just socially, he wasn't telegenic, right? Like, wasn't media friendly, and so the image was a problem.
I felt so bad for him. Remember there was a big standing ovation down in Fort Myers, I think, when they announced that he was gone and there's going to be a new. And I felt really bad for him. I just didn't think he deserved that. And we kind of all ran with that story. That was kind of too bad.
Yeah, Mike, and again, it's all about perception, right? I don't need to tell you guys that it's the way people look at you. It's not the reality of it. And so in his case, like, you go right through that roster, Pedro, Lowe, Veritek, Johnny Damon, Manny Ramirez, he brought them all here. All those guys are Duquette guys. Like, the core of that team was in place when this ownership took over. Now they took it to the next level, but he made some really good baseball decisions in there that helped the team. And Garcia Parra, I didn't even mention him. Like, so, they had a lot of good chips, which is like, so Bob, you asked me a little while ago about the Red Sox, and I would tell you, well, a lot of people were worried about the Red Sox back at that time. And you would say, yeah, but they have talent. Look at the talent they have.
Yeah.
I look at them now and I don't see talent. I don't see the kind of talent you need to win. And that should scare the hell out of you.
Yeah, and no place for it to come either. No prospect of drawing any in either. You're not waiting around for the trade deadline for the big blockbuster.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and this year, I think they're going to be sellers again. I don't know how you add to this team.
Yeah.
And part of me thinks that some of the guys they sign on these 1-year deals were all with the idea of, well, if we're not good, we'll just trade them off at the deadline and try to get something for them. But if you get these old guys on 1-year contracts, what kind of prospects are you going to get? You're not going to get great prospects either. I think they're kind of screwed.
Why did they hire Bloom? I know the Tampa Bay pedigree, but why him out of Tampa Bay? Was he the top choice out of Tampa Bay, or were there other choices out of Tampa Bay in that organization that they could have hired?
Well, I would say Tampa Bay kept guys, and they're still operating at a high level, right? Like, in other words, there were other guys to pick. They picked the wrong guy. And I think they got recommendations from, whether it was Sam Kennedy or Theo Epstein or, Theo through Sam, I think they thought that that was the way to go. And, it could have also just been Henry and Werner. But I think they just assumed that somebody who was the assistant in a market that was succeeding could bring the same model to their place and work. But do you guys remember when Moneyball first started? Billy Beane in Oakland was getting all the credit. His assistant was a guy named Paul DePodesta.
Right.
Well, the Dodgers made the same mistake. They brought in DePodesta to run the Dodgers, and it turned into am I allowed to swear on this?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. It turned into a complete shit show.
You can't say that.
Well, we'll have to bleep that one out. But the Dodgers were a mess under DePodesta. It was the same kind of thing. So, just because you're in an organization that knows how to do it doesn't mean you know how to do it. And I think Bloom is too passive. I think it's always long-term over short. I think in Tampa, it has to be that way. And in Boston, it doesn't. You got to balance it. And he hasn't balanced it.
Let me ask you now, as a talk show host, the greatest thing for a talk show host is Bruins getting bounced in the first round, the Celtics losing, the way they lost. The worst thing for a talk show host is the environment that we have right now. Are you just counting the days until the first Patriots practice, like July 28th or something like that? I mean, is that the state you're in right now every single day when, that switchboard lights up?
Pretty close, Mike. There's a little that, the Celtics are still a good talker because, they have a good team and the problems are not talent-based. So, the sweet spot now, and I'm talking now from talk radio standpoint, right? The sweet spot is a team that can vie for a championship, but maybe just falls short, right? Now the Bruins went out too early. So the Celtics got to the conference final, should have won, but lost. So they're still, well, can they fix it now? What do you do? So there's still a lot there with the Celtics. The worst case scenario to me is the Red Sox. They're a zero. They're a 0.0. They're not good enough to contend. They're not bad enough where you can completely mock them and you don't feel like you're going to get high draft picks. And I know it's funny, right?
I really miss those days.
So we still mock them anyway.
I know, but completely mock them. Those are the days I really miss.
Yeah, it's now games like last night open the door for that, or the one where they gave up the Little League home run to Tampa Bay. You look at that and go, wow, that's stoogery. So, but they're kind of in that, they're just irrelevant. They're just there and that's it. And so, but Mike, to answer your question, football drives it. And so, we're hopeful that the Bill O'Brien thing will work and that they'll be better and the Patriots will make a run at the playoffs. And that would be a really good story this year. As Bob Ryan of the Globe once said, people say, do you root for the home team? Do you root against the home team? And the answer is you root for the story. You root for the best story. And the Patriots making some sort of turnaround here under Mac Jones would be a good story. So I think we're all hoping for that. And maybe they surprise us. But the problem is the division's tough. The division's tough and the conference is tough. So they have a hard schedule. They're going to have their hands full. They're going to need to be good.
Bob, do you have that Cold Springs RV copy in front of you?
Do I ever?
Yeah, we're good at this, Tony. We're doing
Well, you guys have had a lot of practice.
Roll it up, baby. Roll it up.
Bob, does Mike actually, do you guys write a script and does he get it in on time or is he on the late side with that?
Well, old habits don't die easily. Okay, next point. I got it.
Tony used to always have a thing to me about 11:15. He'd say, Mike, how's script going? I said, 3 laps. We got plenty of time. We got 15 minutes till 11, then we're on until 11:20.
Yeah, he would hold up a blank piece of paper and go, this is it right here. I bet you had a similar practice, Bob, if I had to guess.
At least you had a script. Okay, here you go. Most important thing you're going to hear today about campers. Now is the time to see the fantastic selection of travel trailers, fifth wheelers, motorhomes, pop-ups, and park models right there at Cold Springs RV in Ware, New Hampshire, which is just kind of west of Manchester. Where the doors are open and you can freely browse, go in, go out, touch, feel, do whatever it takes. but make yourself happy. Or check out the deals at ColdSpringsRV.com. Go online. You can see everything that they have and what's available. Now, you probably didn't know that Cold Springs RV is one of the region's largest state-of-the-art service centers. That means you can bring your vehicle in for service, or you can, in fact, in this case, learn how to become one of those service people, or as we like to say, experienced auto technician. Or to something you can really learn. Why would you sit around doing sports talk when you could do something like I'm offering here? Cold Springs RV has great benefits and positions open at their Pro RV Service Center. Ever thought about becoming an auto technician? Well, they are ready to train you to learn. Any member of the Red Sox listening, this is a backup job. Ever thought about becoming an auto technician? They are ready to train you. Learn more at teamcoldsprings.com. Thank you very much.
You know what's great? Our very generous sponsors, I think, paid for like a 30-second commercial, but we're so bad reading them, we take like 3 times as long. So
was that bad? Wait a minute, so bad. Don't speak for yourself here.
I was bad, and that was not good. That was not good.
That was not good?
Well, they get their money's worth.
Yeah.
That was not good.
No, I know. That's like, they give us these 30-second spots to do when we're on the air, and we go 35, 40 seconds. The program director says, hey, you got to stick to the 30 seconds here. Let's go. We're giving away time, So he'll bust our chops about it. So
Schmatzy, tell him to calm down.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, he's been a Rick Radzik, our program. He's been a good boss, Bob.
Yeah, I know all about Rick.
All right, so here we are. Now, there used to be we had Ordway on a couple weeks ago, and we talked about some of his favorite callers, Butch from the Cape. I used to have a guy called Mike the Giants fan, used to call up all the time. You got any regulars in there that call? That you
for sure.
Don't want to hear from.
Yeah, for sure. Danny and Quincy still calls us. He used to call. I remember dealing with Danny when we were at when I was doing fill-in at WEEI, and so was Felger for that matter. Danny was calling then. I just thought he was hysterical. So we hear from him. We have a guy, Tom and Quincy, also a Quincy guy who is hysterical, calls us at the same time every day. He works for, roughly in that 5 to 6 o'clock window, sometimes just a little after 6 on the baseball hour I do. And he's, I asked him one day, I said, Tom, you call us at almost the exact same time. So what is it that, and I asked him why, and he said, oh, look, I work for the cable company. I've worked for the cable company for like 25 years. So it's when I get home, I turn you guys on, I crack open a couple of beers and I start listening, and then once I sort of chill out and decompress, I call you. And so he's, certainly entertaining. There were so many to mention, Mike, but we got one special one, Tommy and Lynn. And Tommy's autistic. Huge Boston sports fan, calls us regularly, and I would say 3-4 times, not quite every day, but close. And we always love hearing from him. So, but it's to have those core callers, always a good thing. You feel like you get to know these people over the years, and half the time you never even get to meet them. Occasionally you meet them out at a remote or something when you're out. But oftentimes you never meet them, and yet you feel like they're in your lives every day.
Lynchy, you and I did sports talk radio. There were no cell phones. No one would call you from the car. No, you had to wait some people from home. You'd have to motivate them to call from home, which was no small task. And so unless you got any calls generated, they'd be coming from home. But it didn't happen, until recently. So it's almost a bunch.
Work, they'd be whispering around the corner because they're at work.
We still get that.
Yeah.
The guy huddled in his cube who doesn't want the person sitting next to him to hear him. It's funny.
But
it's funny.
It's amazing how it has thrived, and it's an enormous business, has been for quite some time. And you were a writer, you wrote for the Herald, you wrote for the Globe, you made the jump over here. It was kind of like, well, I don't know if this venture, it's a new station, is going to work. Were there times when you just said to yourself, I don't know, maybe the Globe is not going out of business? I don't think. I think it's going to be around for a long, long time. Were you torn between and how long did that take to finally detach from the newspaper world?
I mean, it took me a while for sure, Mike. The hard part, and I remember people saying this to me, in fact, I'm sure both of you did. And I know, Bob, you mentioned it at one point, like it's something different, like you almost have to reinvent yourself. And because it's a totally different job, it's completely different. And I don't think this is going to sound really shitty. And I didn't realize, because I love it. I love it. But I didn't realize how hard it is when I switched over. And, it was one thing to go into Ordway's show years ago, be a guest twice a week for 4 hours when he did all the prep and planning, and all I had to go in and talk about the team I covered.
Like this show.
I'm sorry.
Like this show.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was, but to be there every day and get involved in it and learn what went into it on a daily basis. Mike had experience with that. Mike Felger, I did not. And so I had to learn that, largely from him and from everyone else, the producers. And I did not realize how mentally taxing it could be, and it really, you're doing it 4 or 5 hours a day, 5 days a week, same topics. And it can wear you out a little bit. And again, I don't say that as, look, we're all lucky to do what we've done. So again, to work in a business that you really care about, and that you always would have done, just an interest in sports you would have had regardless of where you worked. To be able to turn that into a job was a real blessing. And but there were parts of it that are still work, and I had to learn that.
Part of the pressure that you're talking about, of a self-imposed pressure of having to have a knowledge about almost everything that could come up, whether it's the Triple Crown or whether it's the LIV golf versus, you have to have some working knowledge of all these subjects. And that takes a lot of pressure. Unless you're a guy, you don't remember this guy by the name of Ken Beatrice. Do you remember him on?
I don't.
I do.
Tony,
I do.
You don't remember him, or do?
I do not.
He used to have his father call in with questions, and he'd answer the questions so that he knew the answers.
It's a good strategy. I should have tried that.
It was a great strategy, except he got caught.
Oh. Yeah. Well, so I'll tell you that the hardest one for me, and I say the hardest, was hockey. So I had watched, I grew up here. I spent my whole life here. I grew up in, as Mike said, Watertown and Waltham. I went to Tufts University in Medford. And
what happened to Harvard, Tony?
Yeah, no, Mike wrote me a recommendation for Harvard, Bob. I didn't get in, surprisingly enough.
Oh my God. I thought everybody got in. I even got it. Well, I got a banner. I didn't get in. I had a banner.
Yeah, I know that one sealed my fate. So, but it's you grow up here and you understand the whole importance of sports and everything else. But with the Bruins, I was a fan, particularly in the, I'm 55. So the Bobby Orr years I missed for the most part, but through the 80s, used to watch the Bruins religiously with, some of my friends were real hardcore fans, and we would go to bars and watch the playoff games and do all that stuff. But then when they got bad, I kind of checked out, and I didn't really watch for a long time. And once we went on the air, I had to really sort of start to learn it. And I feel like, I wouldn't call myself the Kevin Paul DuPont or put myself in that, that breath or anything, but I've come to love it. I absolutely love the sport. I feel like I've watched enough of it to understand much more of it than I did anyway. But yeah, it's, Ordway said this to me once. He said, and this is when I was writing, he said, your job is to know a lot about a little. My job is to know a little about a lot. And I thought it was a good way of putting it, like when you're doing talk, you really have to try to keep tabs on everything as much as you can. I don't do a great job of it, frankly. I have trouble keeping up. Felger, fortunately, does an exceptional job of it, and which is why he's in the chair he's in, and I'm in the chair I'm in.
Did you ever just say something because the phone lines weren't lighting up, just want to agitate some people and stir something up?
Yeah, I would say that what I've done is try to go to something that, if it's not something that's in people's minds at that time, it's hard, but I'll try to go to something that I feel strongly about and that I know people feel strongly about. So, look, candidly, it's been hard to broadcast about the Red Sox this year. People just aren't interested.
Yeah.
And the only real topic with the team is big picture. Where are they going? How are they going to get there? And so I find myself on a nightly basis almost defaulting to that, Mike. I think, just to try to give you an example. And what people are interested in talking about with the Red Sox is how disappointing they are, how angry they are at ownership and management, and how they fix it. And when I say to people, when are they going to be good again? I say the same question, like, I don't know when they're going to be good again. Tell me when they're going to be good again. People will say to me, the first thing I hear is when they sell the team. I mean, so that's their answer, is that they have to change ownership and change management and start all over again. And again, that's a big undertaking, right? Now you're talking about a 3, 4, 5 year process again. And I don't know how many people are going to want to sit through that, but yeah, I mean, some days you just try to go to what I would call like a go-to, and hope that it strikes a chord with people, and that, there's something that has happened recently that has triggered that thought in them as well.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mike.
Not to change subjects. We're talking about knowing a lot about a lot of subjects. I thought the sports moment of the year happened Sunday afternoon / night, when Taylor rolled in the 72-foot putt. It just triggered memories of Justin Leonard in the '99 Ryder Cup on the 17th hole to basically win it for the United States, and he won it for Canada. It was and Jim Nantz was great. He just says, "What? Oh, I don't believe it." He goes, "Glorious and free," and just shut up right there and just let the moment take care of itself. But I thought that the way they stormed the green, his buddy got tackled by a security guard. First one from Canada in 69 years. I mean, that was, anybody that missed something. It was something else.
Yeah, it's the reason we watch, right?
Yeah.
Like those moments are the reasons you watch, because you never know what's going to happen at the end. And so it can be totally unpredictable, and like, you really just walk away from it and go, "Oh my gosh, that was unbelievable." And, so like, and to your point, absolutely fabulous moment, Canadian player, right? Or Canadian native, 72-footer. I mean, you're looking at the thing going, no way, no way. Like, and it rolls in. And so it's those nights that you sit there and say, boy, that was something. Like, I felt that way about the game the Celtics scored to beat Miami at the buzzer, and
Yes, right.
Derek White put it in. I remember Felger and I exchanged texts, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, what an epic game." And, again, we've all seen a lot at this stage, especially in this town with all the championships. So when you see one, you see those really special ones. That's the whole reason we're in the business we're in. That's the great stuff. Totally unscripted. I still say there's nothing better than, when it comes to drama, than live sports. You can't, you can take me to the best movie with the craziest ending and whatever, but if it's not real, I know it's not real. And the best stuff is always the stuff that's real, totally unscripted, and completely unpredictable. And sports gives you more of that than any. I just think it's, that thing was fabulous. That Canadian Open, that was what a fabulous ending. Yep.
Kind of like this show. You never know, what you're going to get.
Your head's spinning.
We'll have to do it when we're all in the same place sometime, and introduce liquor into the equation, and that might lead us to some good stuff.
Yeah,
you're a salesman at heart. We'll do that. Great. We haven't even talked so much about the NFL, but there's not much to talk about because the NFL pretty much runs itself. The NFL is in charge of the NFL, and it is in charge of America right now.
Yeah, let's just hope we don't sell it to the Saudis, Bob. Like, let's keep that one for ourselves. I hope. It's that story really bugged me not to go down that road, but I don't know.
No, go down that road because poor Jay Monahan's toast.
It feels that way, right? Yeah, feels that way. And again, just something about the whole tour. After all the grandstanding and everything else, which is clearly what it was, it's a hard one for a lot of people to stomach.
It'll be interesting this weekend in LA with the US Open. It'll be the first time that they really, get together under one banner, but whatever that banner is going to be.
Agree.
But they basically sold it to the Saudis. They sold the PGA. The Saudis bought the PGA.
Pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. And I don't know, I don't want to get too corny about it, but the PGA has been in existence for over 100 years, right? The Professional Golfers Association was, I think, created in 1916. The PGA Tour broke off from that about 50 years ago, 55 years ago. I think it was 1968.
Late 60s.
Yeah, and so that's sort of a separate entity, but I kind of put it all under the same umbrella that, this is the PGA of America. That was always how it was, how I always remembered in my head. And to lose that, to me, there's just an emotional attachment and a symbolic attachment to it, that you think of all the great players. And look, it's an international game. I'm not telling you that, but it was the PGA of America. And the idea that it's really not anymore, to me, was kind of a sad day in sports.
Did you see who Rory's playing with in the first 2 rounds?
I did not. I haven't seen the pairings.
Brooks Koepka.
Oh, great.
Maybe they'll have a fight.
So that's a smart one.
Yeah, they might have a fight.
But I'll tell you, they're pretty good about those. They're putting together some creative pairings. It's smart.
Yeah.
A lot of eyeballs.
Who do you have in that match, Mike?
I get Koepka.
Yeah,
so do I.
Right now,
I think Rory's going to win another one,
And he's good in these. He's good in these kinds of tournaments. He's won what? Is it 3 PGAs and 2 US Opens?
Yes. Yeah.
So, and I think they've all been similar kinds of tournaments. Typically the PGA and the US Open are relatively similar in terms of shot making. It's about staying out of the rough. Yeah, playing it smart. Koepka seems to go in with a real plan. He's got the power to hit it out of the rough, and he plays conservatively and sticks to his plan. So, to me, I like Koepka too. I think that's a good pick.
Yeah. I'd never want to get into a fist fight with Koepka. I think he'd kick the crap out of me.
He's the Jokic. He's Jokic of the PGA.
Strong guy. Right? I want his workout regimen.
Tony, you're a great guest today. Thank you so much. You were great.
Listen, to both of you, and I say this sincerely, because, Bob, I interned with Mike a long time ago, but I got to know you over the years as well. And you guys were both great role models for anybody that's worked in this business in this town. So I hope you're both doing well and hanging in there. And sincerely, I say to you both, a happy Father's Day.
Thank you, Tony. Then the same. Thank you so much. That was nice.
Could have used those like 30 years ago when he was an intern. Use some of those sentiments,
Yeah. Exactly.
He just figured out how to put those words together in one sentence without.
Hey, but don't forget to follow us on social media and subscribe, and it's free. Subscribe doesn't mean pay. It's free on YouTube and your favorite podcasting app. Find links on unanchoredboston.com. I'm shocked that Channel 5 and Channel 4 never had us read live copy when we were actually working for them.
Believe me, I do it now. I'm a little younger than you two. Obviously, I do it now, and I still stumble all over the place. It's ridiculous.
Well, come back and visit us again some other time, Tony, all right?
I will. Yeah, look, I look forward to seeing you soon. All right. And in all seriousness, you guys take care. It's really good to see you.
Thanks. And the same to you on Father's Day, buddy. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot. Okay. Be well.
Be well.